Okay, yeah.
You can ask some questions about what
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we're thinking 3 nights.
Okay.
Do something maybe 3 nights, same nights that the classes are running during the day.
Okay. Okay.
They were
Okay.
like, Yami was like,
Oh, there's. Yep. Yeah. Got me? Yeah. All right. Super duper. Howdy.
one of my teachers put a curse on me. That sort of like voodoo doll type stuff.
One of your teachers put a.
No, no, I'm saying one of the kids, you know,
Oh.
one of the things they may be dealing with,
Oh,
kids
yeah.
may be dealing with is somebody putting a curse on them.
Yeah.
Using,
Yeah.
call it voodoo, but Santeria. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, we don't deal with a lot of voodoo around here. It is a good thing. I'm very thankful for that. Well, Stan, before we get underway, is there anything you want to share with the group about your journey? Or I guess you could share Word Sunday as well if you prefer, but I know we're all anxious to hear if there's any highlight you wanted to share.
If I can get a couple minutes Sunday, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah. I think one in house, yeah? Okay, eyes have it. Yeah. All righty. Excellent. You know what, does somebody else want to pray to start us off tonight? Okay. Okay. Amen. Amen. Excellent. All right. So, don't know about you guys, but this one hits home. Tonight we're going to be talking about procrastination. Chapter 15, procrastination, something I've never dealt with in my life. So, yeah, and we're starting off with the Bible verse, Judges 18:9. So they said, "Arise, let us go down against them. For we have seen the land, and indeed it is very good. Would you do nothing? Do not hesitate to go and enter and possess the land." So don't hesitate, go and enter. Now, does anybody know the context of that? Yeah, you guys want to help us out a little bit? No. All right. Well, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's the first thought I had, and I saw Judges and I realized this is actually when they go to take Dan. He's, this is actually not a good example. This is an example of how you can go sideways. The good example would be when Joshua and Caleb came back from spying out the land, and they're like, yes, go for it. And everyone's like, no, we're afraid. Let's procrastinate. Yeah, big giants and everybody, we're like little grasshoppers. Let's procrastinate and not make a finalized decision. And then they don't enter the promised land. And the window of opportunity shuts, and they have to wait another 40 years. Yeah, yes, except for those two, that whole generation dies in the wilderness. That would be the correct example to use. Here in Judges is actually how you can get presumptuous when you act too quickly without doing what the Lord has said. Because this example in Judges is actually when the tribe of Dan goes up and takes Lachish, which is outside of the promised land. And they borrow that symbolic language from Joshua, in which Joshua said it the right way, and they're saying it the wrong way, which I guess just goes to show you can get somebody to hurry up and rush into the wrong thing. As it says in Proverbs that he who makes haste with his feet misses the way. So I guess that's going to be a tension here as we're talking about procrastination between not waiting too long, but also not being too hasty. Right? That's the tension we're operating in. There's always tension. Tension is dangerous. A horse can kill you with its kick, but if you don't want that tension to be there, you have to hamstring the horse, and the horse is worthless. Right? So we have to operate in this tension between. We don't want to rush in like fools, right? Only fools rush in. I could not do that in the youth group. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. But yes, fools rush in, and that's not good. At the same time, if you wait too long, that's not good. So Paul talks in 1 Corinthians 16:8-9 about a great and effective door has been opened to me and many adversaries. So open doors, and we talked in Acts about how Paul did not walk through every open door. Sometimes you're allowed to say, you know what, this open door is indeed open, but it's not a good fit for right now. And he circled back around later to those. But an open door represents opportunities that are only available for a limited time. The Greeks used to use two terms to describe this. Chronos was the term used to measure time such as minutes, right, like chronology. Or kairos is related to opportunities. The Greeks depict kairos as a winged cherub, right? They like this graphic kind of language. It's a winged cherub with a long forelock. And as the winged cherub flies by, you must grab the forelock or he's gone. This is the nature of opportunities in life and ministry. You need to seize them before they pass. The enemy will go through an open door and oppose the work of God. So the only issue is whether or not you'll go forward to do what he has called you to do or procrastinate and likely miss the opportunity. Now, with that, I would say that the ancient understanding of time was also not linear. We think of time, chronos, as something very linear, right? We do timelines. We love timelines as Westerners, right? Well, it starts here, and then this, and that happened, and it ends there. And I don't know why that wasn't in the original Hebrew, right? Because we are so hooked on chronological time. But we see in the scriptures that's not always the way the stories of the narratives of the Bible are listed. They're often listed topically instead of chronologically. And more than that, in the culture of the Bible and many cultures today, people don't see time as linear. They see it as circular or a spiral, right? In which they would say, yes, you've missed kairos. You missed the opportunity to catch kairos. At some point, he's going to circle back around again. And when you get that next chance, you better reach out and grab it because you missed it the first time. It's kind of like C.S. Lewis in his book, I think it's The Silver Chair. They're given, I think, 4 big prophecies, and they're supposed to do the right thing at the right moment. And the first 3, they totally make a disaster of. They fail to fulfill the first 3 words that were given to them. And then they get to the last one, and they have this big debate about, well, we messed up the first 3. Does it even matter if we try to make this last one work? And then they come up with this thought, well, actually, what if the first 3, that in essence, what if God gave us 4 words, knowing that we would miss the first 3, but because we've learned from our mistakes on the first 3, he knew that we would accomplish the last one. And then in the end, that's exactly what they did, was they learned from the first 3 mistakes that they didn't follow the words given to them. So when the opportunity was crucial, they followed the right one. And that's kind of this idea is kairos, is it's a special, God-appointed, sovereign moment to reach out and grab it. But if it is missed, some things you never get another chance, but other ones, they circle back around, and you have to reach out with all you got to grab it when you see the opportunity. And of course, we know that preparation is more important than opportunity. Some people just wait their whole lives for the right opportunity, and when the opportunity finally comes around, they're not prepared, right? We believe, be faithful in small things, be preparing so that when the opportunity does circle around, you'll be ready to take it. That's what we see in the lives of men like David, Joshua, Caleb. When the opportunity came, they were ready because they were prepared. But how did Joshua prepare? Why was Joshua ready when that kairos moment came? Do you guys remember how Joshua was prepared? See, Moses would come, and he would come to the tent of meeting, and he would pray. And they talk about how everyone would bow down in their tents when Moses would go into the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord would descend upon the tent of meeting, and then Moses would exit. And then it says that Joshua would remain in the tent of meeting. It's that Joshua was abiding in that place of prayer. And when Moses would go up on the mountain, Joshua would follow him as far as he could up the mountain. It's because Joshua, he remained in the Word, he remained in prayer, that he was able to reach out for the right opportunity. And those are the things that will make us ready when those opportunities circle around. And I know many of you at your stage in life, there are probably opportunities where you look back and you think, man, I missed it, right? There's this opportunity came around. I was afraid to reach out. I was afraid I'd stumble or fall if I grabbed hold of it. And I missed the opportunity. But I want to encourage you that there might be another opportunity coming around your way. Something that you wish you'd done in the past. I think of people who had a call to mission work when they were young, who then retire and find, I remember one guy who, after he retired, was able to start taking trips to the Philippines. Something had been on his heart a long time, and he missed that opportunity when he was young, but the Lord gave him another opportunity to grab hold of that when he got older. And yeah, even if you look back and think, man, I missed it, it might be coming back around. Anyhow, oftentimes we find ourselves well-intentioned. I was speaking with a man today who said, intention is not a fruit of the Spirit. And I was like, ooh, that's true. Being well-intentioned is not a fruit of the Spirit. We find ourselves well-intentioned in regard to our desire to move forward in our ministry, but week after week, month after month, year after year, nothing changes. We keep saying, today it's going to be different, but then we fail to move forward. The issue is often the problem of procrastination, but Dr. David Livingstone, the great missionary to Africa, once said, I am ready to go anywhere for God as long as it is forward. It is good for us to desire to move forward, and as we consider this lesson, we want to learn how to avoid the problem of procrastination. So that's our subject, procrastination, our object to move forward, and the reasons for procrastination, which is uncomfortably close. You might know these points as well as I do. One, indecisiveness. One of the reasons that causes us to procrastinate is the inability to make decisions. Oftentimes, people refer to this as an existential crisis. An existential crisis refers to the fact that we as humans can never know the far-reaching implications of our decisions. And because we don't know the far-reaching implications of our decisions, we find it extraordinarily difficult to make a decision for which we don't know what the results will be. Right? That's your existential crisis. And people usually come into, they used to call it a midlife crisis, when they realize that the sand at the bottom of the hourglass is higher than the sand at the top of the hourglass. That's when a lot of people get that existential crunch and they think, okay, I am losing my life. The days of my life are shifting away, and I don't know what to do to make the most of them. And that can even lead to more indecisiveness, or in the case of a midlife crisis, they compensate for years of indecisiveness by what? Impulsiveness. Yes, by making bad decisions, by being impulsive, saying, okay, I haven't made enough of my life, now I need a motorcycle, right? That's how I make up for years of indecision. I'm going to get a motorcycle, or I'm going to get a new wife, as some people do, or I'm going to move to this place, or they swing to the other side, which is then kind of like this passage from Judges, the right move, but in the wrong direction. It's good that you're acting, but now you're not acting on the good thing, now you're acting on the bad thing. But I often, when I struggle with indecisiveness, I often think of Genesis 43:10. I mean, we even just in the past couple years, we have had some big decisions to make. We're wondering, do we move our family of 7 across the world to pursue the call here in Newark when things are going so well on the mission field? And people were saying, well, if you leave, everything's going to fall apart. It's not going to last without you. And the back and forth of, well, what if I do make the wrong decision? What if my children suffer under it? And of course, people suffer no matter what you choose to some extent. But this passage in Genesis 43, it's where Joseph's brothers are talking about going back to Egypt to get more grain. But the last time they went, Joseph was really harsh with them and said, if they don't send Benjamin, he won't receive them and they won't get any food. And so their father Jacob is being indecisive. It's Jacob, Israel. He's being really indecisive because he's afraid, and fear leads to more indecisiveness. But then they say, if we had not delayed, we would have now returned twice. And at some point I realized, you know what, Aaron? Even if you make the wrong decision, you can make that decision, realize it was wrong, come back, make another decision, find out that it was right, and come back by the time you've done nothing. Right? You can either just continue to do nothing, or you can try, see if the Lord blesses it, see if it's the right decision, and try something else in that same amount of time. And that
story looks like it's like one conversation. It's weeks.
Yes. Yes, a long time of them saying, come on, Dad, just let us go. Just give us Benjamin. It'll be fine. I know we already kind of have one of your sons in prison, but you didn't like him that much anyhow. We won't let Benjamin, look, if Benjamin gets thrown in prison, you can take my son. Just let us go. Yeah, but if we had not delayed, we would have now returned twice. And how many of you have had that experience where, in hindsight, you say, you know what, if I wouldn't have just been so indecisive, I could have literally built the thing, torn it down, and built it again by the time I made plans. Yeah, so I find that encouraging to just say, at some point, you know what? This is what I think God is leading me into, and I'm going to pursue it. And you know what? If it's wrong, I've lost some time, I've lost some resources, I've lost some energy, but at least then I'm further. Even if you make the wrong decision, just to discover that it's the wrong decision has at least limited your pool of decisions. At least I've learned from this. Okay, this is not my thing. I tried a career as a baker, and my bakery failed, and that was a giant catastrophe. But at least I know that's not my thing. I am not a good business owner. I'm not going to pursue my own business anymore. Yeah. Anyhow, we can be very indecisive. And we can even over-spiritualize our indecisiveness. We can say, oh, I'm still praying about it. And it's a good thing to pray about ministry decisions. But we also saw, as we studied through Mark, that word immediately coming up all the time. And immediately this, and immediately that, and immediately that. And the thing is, we want to be in that place, just like Joshua, that through prayer and through the word, we're walking by the Spirit so that we don't have to say, oh, let me go away and get fasted up and get prayed up and get read up. And then I can come back to this opportunity that is now gone because I wasn't ready for the opportunity. We want to be always abiding in the Lord and walking by the Spirit so that at any given moment when he presents us an opportunity, to share the gospel with someone, that we don't say, oh, I just don't feel spiritual today and I have doubts of my own because I haven't been in the Word and I haven't been walking. We're supposed to be ready at all times. As it is written, to always be ready to give a defense for the hope that is in us. Right? So our goal is to always be ready. That's what we see with Jesus. It's interesting. Jesus, he cast out a demon that the other guys aren't able to cast out. And they said, why were we not able to cast this out? And he said, this kind comes out only by prayer and fasting. But did Jesus go away and have a little fasting retreat before. No, he was already prayed up. He was already fasted up. He had already done that in preparation of the ministry that was to come. And that's the best kind of thing that we can do. Instead of responding, that we're actually proactive and we bring ourselves into such a unity, a harmony with the Holy Spirit, that we're ready in the moment to bring what needs to be brought. Yes, but oftentimes we hear that, well, let me pray about it. And but we need to decide to decide. It's a good one. We need to decide, and once we make a decision, we need to follow through to enhance success. It's interesting that sometimes in the scriptures you see, for example, when the finger of God or of an angel appears out of nowhere and writes many, many tekepers on the wall, the guy he's beside himself. He turns white. He doesn't know what to do. He's terrified. He promises a third of the kingdom to whoever can read it for him. Daniel comes in, he reads it for him, and then what? Nothing. Daniel tells him exactly what to do, and this man rests in the fact that he has a plan. And for some of us, we're like, oh man, I need to have a plan. I need to have something I need to do, and then we get the plan, but we don't fulfill the plan because we're comforted that there's a plan there if we want to use it, but we don't actually use it, right? We have to decide to make this plan, but then also to walk through the plan. And distractions. There's an inherent conflict between play and work. There's also a conflict between performing tasks that seem pleasant or desirable and performing tasks that seem more difficult. There will always be distractions. We need to choose to stay focused and be disciplined. So I would say these are the thorns that choke out your fruitfulness. Jesus talks about the parables, and he talks about the thorns that come. They grow alongside the grain and don't allow the grain to bear fruit. The grain grows, or like the stalk of the grain grows, but it doesn't actually come to be fruitful because there's so much other stuff in the soil, and there's never been a more distracted generation in history than ours. But there's no group discussion in this one, so I'm going to ask you guys a group question. I guess we won't break off into a group. There's not many of us here. Maybe we can just have some feedback like this. But how do you guys garden? How do you start a garden? Does anybody here garden? Yeah? Okay. All right. So you choose out what you want, or you choose what you want to be in that plot of ground. Yeah, Peyton. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So first of all, you're talking about making a decision. The seed catalog means you have to make a decision. What am I going to put in the ground? And then you follow through with that decision by you plant them, but somebody else. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Which you could say that removing of the thorns and the weeds, of the distractions, that in order to work well, to have deep work, we often have to sort out those, like you can't have Facebook open and a stack of magazines and whatever else on your desk. You're not going to get anything done. You clear away all those distractions and say, okay, this is dedicated space to do what I'm supposed to do right now. But specifically, the early seeding stages. How do you guys do it? I mean, there's a couple different schools of thought, but. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 But be it in the little seed caps, you usually plant 2 or 3 in each one, right? Yeah. Yeah. And then usually you select which one of those seems best, and you kind of chop off the others. Or you do what cheapskates like me do and disentangle them and plant them separate. Yeah. I do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's true. I know. I do the same thing. I try to tease them apart. I don't like killing one. I'm like, it was hard to get it this far. It wants to grow. Yeah. But the point is, people usually plant more than they're able to ultimately tend, right? And this is what the scriptures say. Many are the plans in the heart of a man, right? It's all full of all kinds of seed, but the Lord directs his steps, saying that eventually God shows you, okay, this one and not this one or not that one. Or if you're like me, you've tried on a number of occasions, you have like 2 tomato plants coming up in the same pot. And you're like, they both look so strong and healthy. I can't kill one of these. You guys done this before? Yeah, what happens? Yep, yeah, they don't do well. Every time I'm like, it'll work this time. And I try to let 2 grow up together, and it's too much in one spot. And unfortunately, good things can also be distractions. When we don't say this, not that, not this, then even good things can choke each other out. There's just too much going on, and boy, we Americans are so inclined to that, right? Each of us, as guys, every guy wants to have one of every tool so he can do a little of everything, and we want to be able to master something of everything instead of, in some other countries, people don't own tools because, well, that's the carpenter's job or that's the electrician's job. That's not my job. I do my thing and they do their thing. And we as Americans, not only do we want all that, if possible, I would like my own, 4-wheel jack for my car so that the 2 times a year I actually do something to my car, I could just, you know what I'm talking about. I wish I could have one of every tool so I could do it all and do it all very inefficiently because I've only done it once or twice. But that seems to be our proclivity, whereas other people are better about, for example, I don't know if any of you have heard, but in China, most people don't have a kitchen. Yeah, you work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. What are you going to do with the kitchen? Other people cook for cheap. You just go to a restaurant. That space, that whole kitchen space, costs a lot of money in China to be able to rent an apartment with a kitchen. So most apartments, from what I've been told from people who lived in Beijing, most apartments don't have a kitchen because that's not my thing. And Marit was telling me about an influencer guy she was listening to, and he sold all of his tools so as to not come into the temptation to do something himself because he's recognized that that's not his wheelhouse. He's not good at it, and other people can do it better and more efficiently for a price that he can earn in 10 minutes of doing business. And so he just said, no. Now, I do have a bit of a hesitation there because Paul also did stuff with his hands so that he might be an example to others. Sometimes we should still do things just for the sake that it's an example, but that efficiency aspect can be important. Anyhow, distractions. It's very easy for us to get distracted, or even just, I picked on us guys with our tools, but what about you ladies with your kitchens, huh? How many different types of appliances are in our kitchens? I even just think about, huh? Huh? Okay, excellent. You use them. Amy has told me that there's a lot of people she knows, and specifically guilty is the Granville area, who have big, fantastic kitchens that pretty much never get used. And he could land an aircraft on her island. Her marble island to hold pizzas once a year. It's like the most American thing I've ever heard. Oh boy. Distraction. Distractions or competition. Yeah. And I guess the discipline is to prioritize, right? And say, is this actually what God would have me pursuing, or is this just something fun? You know, when in Hebrews 12, I believe it talks about, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. Not only the sin, but also just the weights, just the things that are distractions that are holding us back. Let us also lay those aside so that we might run with endurance the race set before us. In line with delegation, I actually had a dream last night that I was running a race and teaching other people to run the race, but I had to keep stopping to do paperwork. So I think the Lord's trying to show me to keep on that delegation train. So, but distractions, forgetfulness. Some people repeatedly justify procrastination by saying, I forgot, and this pattern is more likely rebellion than true forgetfulness. If the issue is forgetfulness, then a notepad, PDA, and a calendar will help us to remember. A short pencil is better than relying on a long memory. Yeah. This is the one where we need the youth group in here. You guys are all like, yes, I love a personal planner. And I remember the first church I was working at. The pastor bought me a planner, handed it to me and said, I want you using this at every meeting. Yeah. But then there's the excuse, I work better under pressure. And some people justify their procrastinating by asserting that they work better under pressure, encouraging them to volunteer for a SWAT team or take up parachuting as a hobby, but not to procrastinate. Which I have to say, Pastor Bruce has more executive function than anyone I've ever met. So this is easy. It's probably been a discipline, but he has a lot of executive function. I know, especially today, there's a lot of people struggling with ADHD or ADHD symptoms, which, you know, once it's beyond half the population, it doesn't count as a disease anymore, right? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Something's not right, but there is an incredible amount of ADHD symptoms in young people, and for them, they say it's true that they work better under pressure because they have low producing dopamine, and the adrenaline gives a better push than the dopamine. Yes, that's exactly what happens, and that's why I know several pastors who have had multiple bouts of adrenal fatigue because they just run on adrenaline all the time until you can't. And I'm sure there's also paramedics and different people who do the same, but that kind of goes with the job of a paramedic, I guess. Though sometimes those paramedics, they just get kind of chill towards everything, you know. You're like your bone sticking out of your leg and like, don't worry, we'll get you patched up. But anyhow, as far as that goes, Proverbs 4:23 is a good one. I won't turn there. It's where it says, above all things to guard your heart being leb, which you can also think as, in the Hebrew sense, it's the mind. So above all things, guard your mind. And something I've thought about a lot lately, with all the dopamine fatigue we have and relying on adrenaline to get stuff done, I've thought I would love to have a T-shirt. I would love to make a T-shirt that says, above all else, guard your dopamine, for out of this flow the springs of life. Which is partially true. I mean, it's, you know, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, all those things. But that's part of it. Guarding your mind, part of guarding your mind is to guard your dopamine. And part of guarding your dopamine is to cut down distractions and say, okay, I'm not going to play Candy Crush or whatever else people do to drain their dopamine and distract themselves. In fact, one thing I've recently heard about that I really like is in that moment where a lot of people will reach for that quick dopamine kick of, I don't know, scrolling Instagram or playing Candy Crush or whatever they do. This guy has come up with a system he calls the thinking chair. So he has one chair designated where when he doesn't want to work anymore, he's tired of working, his dopamine's used up, he's allowed to just go and sit in the chair and do nothing. Let his dopamine replenish. But he's not allowed, that's the thing, you're not allowed to do anything except think about what you're going to do when you get out of it, which has to be something related to work. So he'll just kind of sit there, and first you just kind of, what's that called? Gap learning. They have done studies where if you take a 5-minute break, it helps your brain to process everything that's just come in. But your brain just gets to focus on that. You just kind of sit there and you be, and don't let yourself distract yourself with your phone or anything else. You just sit there, and whenever you're like, I'm bored, then you go back to work. And I thought that's kind of a cool and interesting solution for the dopamine drain. And you see it in people, right? Like, go to any high school and look at the kids, and you see in their face, they're just drained. They've just been overstimulated for so long. There's just this drain in the faces of kids where it's hard to get them excited or make them happy. All the coffee they're drinking. I mean, I really sound like the old guy, oh, these kids today. But, I don't remember anybody drinking coffee when I was in high school. And I see kids all over the place, not even just coffee, like Starbucks, like 1.5 times caffeine, super heavily caffeinated coffee drinks, of course, with way too much sugar, which is also not good because that's also causing a crash, which they also answer with another cup of coffee. I'm like, you're 16. You should not be drinking 4 cups of coffee a day. This is not... When you have a 6-month-old, you're allowed to drink 4 cups of coffee a day, all right? When you're a 16-year-old, that's not okay. Where do you go to from there, right? People usually, if age starts catching up with you and you can't quite bring it on your job, then people will tag on another cup of coffee. Where do you go if you're 16 in the best shape of your life and you're already maxed out on your caffeine intake? Well, drugs, yeah, that's true. A lot of people will turn to drugs to help them focus or you got your drugs to wake up, your drugs to focus, your drugs to relax. Well, and the problem is a lot of them have an RX on the side, so you're allowed to do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's 100%. And then there's all the side effects, so then now you need sleeping drugs to combat the effects of that one, and then that takes your hunger away, so now you need drugs to help you feel hungry. And when our answer, especially as Americans, is usually more. I need more of this, I need more of this food, I need more of this drug, I need more of this caffeine, more. And sometimes God's answer is less or none. Just saying no and saying, okay, instead of having another hit of adrenaline or dopamine or of caffeine or whatever I'm doing to try to push, I'm just going to take 5 minutes and just sit down and in my thinking chair and just process for a little bit, and then I'm going to come back stronger. It's just a no. Yeah. E, feeling overwhelmed. Some tasks appear overwhelming because of their scope. It is helpful to begin to view the task as component pieces. By breaking down the whole into smaller component tasks, it becomes less overwhelming. I imagine most of you have that pretty dialed in. Now, whether we always do it is something else, but that you understand that. But it's important to remember, especially as we are trying to bring younger people into jobs or apprenticeship or discipleship or ministry, it's good to remember that young people are very easily overwhelmed. And when we break it down like that, it helps them. I guess I need to grab myself by the ear and think that might be helpful in the raising of children as well. When kids feel overwhelmed by their chores, break it down step by step. Fear of failure. The fear of failing and a desire for perfection can keep us from ever getting started. You have to have a freedom to fail. It is helpful to realize that we glean valuable lessons from all experiences. The School of Hard Knocks provides a great education, and the tuition is not as expensive as we fear, especially in small things. This is why Jesus wants faithfulness in small things, so you fail in small ways, so that when you finally get the big opportunity, you've already learned from all your small failures, so that now you're not going to have a cataclysmic failure in the big thing, because you learned from the small. But as a pastor I listened to once said, he said, but when possible, let other people pay your stupid tax. So somebody's got to pay the stupid tax. Somebody's got to make the mistakes to learn from. If possible, learn from other people's mistakes. Let them pay your stupid tax so you don't have to pay it yourself. And there's a lot of truth to that. I have heard a lot of overly confident young people be like, it's okay. If it all fails, I'll learn from it. It's like, well, or you can learn from the 10 people telling you not to do it because they tried it and failed. But in German, I love this expression. Wer nicht hören möchte, muss fühlen. Which is, whoever doesn't want to hear will feel. That's such a good one. Because if you won't listen to advice, you're going to feel the sting of failure. But anyhow, all of these issues and problems that we just discussed that hit too close to home remind us that we need a remedy for our procrastination. The first one is to get started. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, as it says in the Chinese proverb. It is very difficult to drive when your car is in park, since that car won't even move. And I think it was John MacArthur who said, you need an entire crane or multiple cranes to turn an 18-wheeler if it's not moving. But if the 18-wheeler is moving, you just need a finger. Yeah, Peyton? Rehoboam. Yes, that is exactly what happened to Rehoboam. He listened to his hot-headed friends instead of the wisdom of the elderly and said, my little member is bigger than my father's thigh, and suffered for it. Yeah, that's true. Over millennia. Yeah, the effects have still not been are not fully measurable with the 10 lost tribes. That's a pretty wild idea, isn't it? You can mess up so bad that it's an immeasurable dent until the end of the age. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, Dummkopf. Yeah. Yeah, when you fail to listen to the wisdom of those in authority and the aged, it does not go well. Yeah. Yeah. Like people seeing Rehoboam in heaven, and he's like, I know. I could have eaten a half slice of humble pie in that life, and instead I get to eat mouthfuls of humble pie for all eternity. Mhm. Mm. Yeah. 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 Mm. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, then I guess that's the point, the evaluation, and also having somebody to evaluate with and say, that coach who says, well, look, this is what you did wrong here. Even it's interesting how an athlete can even correct themselves oftentimes if they take a video of themselves and then take that third party perspective of themselves and say, well, that's where I messed up. But living it, they can't see it. But you have to get that distance. And that's what's really helpful sometimes, to have somebody with a fresh set of eyes to say, well, look, man, you keep doing this, of course it's going to keep ending poorly because you're misstepping here and there and the other. And also there's the emotional aspect that holds people up to where they can't break it into pieces because, well, what are they going to think if I do that? And what is this person, and what's my mom going to say? She never, and there's all that emotional baggage that's keeping it one solid cluster of mess, where somebody who's less emotionally involved can say, let's just line this out, just disengage from the emotional aspect. That's a different category in itself, and let's just list this out. Yeah. Yes. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember there was a young man in Austria, and he was talking with a Calvary Chapel pastor, and he'd been studying for his bar for 10 years. And he said, man, just take the bar. Just see what happens. You get multiple chances. You've been studying for 10 years, just take the bar. And he had a typical Austrian fashion. He'd had a very strict father and had this fear of failure and need for perfection. And, but the pastor kept saying, just try. What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work out, but what's the best that can happen? You actually pass your bar and you can finally do something with yourself. And the guy's like, I don't know. And he came back a couple of days later and he said, if I fail, will you still love me? Because that's never the impression he had from his father. And the guy said, of course, man. And so he went and he took his bar and he aced it. Got a practically perfect score. Because he'd been over-preparing for way too long. But yeah, sometimes you get that question, what's pros and cons? What's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? Yeah, it's a good point. It's always the case that people need help organizing their own life, but especially today, it seems like there's a growing need for that. Even I was told that before heroin hit the streets of Newark, that even downtown and east side of town was really nice. Does anybody remember that? Before the 80s, when the heroin hit from the mafia? Okay. 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 Yeah. Well, I wasn't around in the 80s, but I was told it took a turn for the worst when the heroin hit. And, Lieutenant Help Matters. Yeah. But anyhow, we want to get started, get that momentum moving, get into first gear to try to make our way to second. That's also another big thing. People want perfect from the start. But God did not, I have to be careful about this, but first of all, he never said it is perfect when he was creating the world. And it is very good didn't come until day 6. He was satisfied with what I have done today is good. 6 days, 6 celestial days, he did good work, or 5 celestial days, did good work to get to the 6th day of being very good. Now, if God, in essence, had to build up, because it's a compounding of effort, if God had to build up to very good, who are we that think that the first time we do something, it should be perfect? Or that the first time we do something, it should be excellent, it should be very good? We have to be satisfied that good is good enough. Yeah, it's true. I mean, like the sacrifice. The sacrifice is either acceptable or it's not. He doesn't say, oh, that's A1 meat over there. That's a good one. And your sacrifice is only B2 meat. It's acceptable or it's not. And our goal is to live in such a way that what we present to God is acceptable. So we also want to be time specific. Set those SMART goals, specific, measurable, obtainable, realistic, timely goals. And by establishing deadlines when tasks need performed, we can help stay on course. It can also be very helpful to consider the various component tasks that need to be completed. For example, if you're organizing a concert, there are various tasks to be completed before the concert. You want to arrange for the artist, secure the venue, arrange for promotion, for the events such as flyers, radio, social media announcements, and the coordinated event staff such as ushers and hospitality, to name a few of the tasks. He's kind of speaking from experience there. They've organized some big events. But there is the appropriate time frame for each of these tasks. Depending on the artist, you may need to schedule several months to a year in advance. The promotion will need to be coordinated about 75 to 90 days in advance. By setting time-specific deadlines for each task, we're able to track to determine whether we are on course or if we have begun to procrastinate. And all of that is clutch. All of that is really important. But I also want to encourage you, don't be like the Levite on the road from Jerusalem, or from Jericho to Jerusalem. You guys familiar with that story with the man who was beaten within an inch of his life on the side of the road and stripped naked? Yeah? Yes, the story of the Good Samaritan, where the Levite, who is busy serving the Lord and has deadlines to keep, he has to get to the temple so he can fulfill his time of service, and he pushes past that wounded man, and then the priest pushes past the wounded man so that only the Good Samaritan has pity upon him. We have to be careful, especially in the big church, heavy organization model that we have in this country. Maybe you guys have seen people get run over by the machine of big church. Has anybody here ever seen that? Well, that's good. Yeah. Where, for example, volunteers or staff, sometimes staff's even worse, are run into the ground to achieve the objectives of the pastor. Yeah, the pastor says, we're going to do this, this, and this, and that, and you're going to do it, and you're going to do it, and you're going to do it, and I don't care if you work 65 hours a week, and you neglect your family, and they're in a terrible state, we're going to make it happen. And we can neglect, that one of the staff, something happens to them, they're wounded on the side of the road, so to speak, and you say, get up, yeah, the show must go on. I don't care how you feel right now. You're scheduled to do kids ministry right now. I don't care, your dad, I don't know anybody that heartless, but there's often, I think especially the whole thing of people getting burned out to the extent that I have seen a lot of really, really talented, gifted, called ministers just get so fried at some point that they never want to have anything to do with ministry again. They just get so totally burned through that they're like, I'm done. I'm good. I have talents to give, but no thanks. And we have to still be willing, in the midst of plans and strategies and timelines and everything else, also understanding that if we don't get to God's destination, God's way, it won't work anyhow. Pastor Bruce, I think one of the first conferences, maybe the first conference he put on, they did all these things over months, right? And they got everything together, and the people with the name tags standing at the door, and the flyers and the announcements and the this and the that and the people there. And according to his testimony, not a single soul came to the conference outside of his own church staff. Nobody came. You just planned for months and nobody shows. If you try to achieve God's purpose in the flesh, it's not going to work. And anybody you ran over to get there is also going to be like, really? You neglected me, broken on the side of the road for this? That's not a good testimony. Yeah, well, that certainly could be the fact that it was just a good idea instead of a God idea. That can be it. But also, I think we can be given a God idea and derail it through trying to achieve it in our flesh. I mean, planning churches is always a thing that's good to do. It's, or trying to make disciples. That's always a God idea. But you can try to make disciples in the Spirit, or you can say, we're going to do this big event, and they're going to come in for the big event, and then they're going to hear the gospel, and then somehow they're going to mystically turn into good disciples because they heard the gospel, and try to do the work of God in the flesh, and then it doesn't work out well. Anyhow, and finally, establish accountability. Find one or more people that can help keep you from procrastinating. Share with them specific time goals and be willing to let them review whether they are appropriate. Some of us, when we finally get some goals put down, we have completely unrealistic timelines, like anybody who's ever been like, I'm going to lose 30 pounds in 3 weeks. You need that person there to be like, no, you won't. Oh, sure, I got it. I got this one dialed in. No, you won't. You definitely will not do that. I guarantee it. No, I'm going to be like David Goggins. No, you won't. Dial it back. And Pastor Bruce has also done this for me a couple times where I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to do this, and that. And he's like, whoa, easy, buddy. Dial back your expectations. It's not going to go that fast. All right. That agree to allow them to encourage you to meet the goals. Remember to avoid the situation where you shift your responsibility to your accountability partner. For example, the person who continues to procrastinate and justifies the problem by saying, it's your fault, you didn't remind me. If the accountability partners are not helping, get a new partner, but take responsibility to stop procrastinating and learn to move forward. So, that's all I got for you all this evening. We got some life work questions. What if anything, keeps you from moving forward in your ministry today? Secondly, review the section regarding reasons for procrastination. What reasons may be a particular problem? Finally, review the section regarding the remedy for procrastination. How will you apply the lessons learned in the coming season? So that's the life work, something that's generally good to think about. But before we leave, I'm just curious, did he miss anything in his remedies? Because we have a lot more issues than we do remedies lined up here. It's kind of like anybody can tell that the car is broken. It takes somebody who knows what they're doing to fix the car. I don't know, my car's going pop, pop, pop. It's harder to diagnose and say, yeah, this is what you need to fix your car. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah. Do you guys know the Eisenhower method? Does that say anything to you? The importance versus urgency, 4 squared. So you make a list. This is what I've used for most of my ministry. You simply make a list of what you need to do, and then you put an I by everything that's important and a U by everything that's urgent, and you do the things which are both important and urgent first. And then you move to the important and the urgent. Yeah, prioritize. Yes.
I didn't know I was following the Eisenhower.
Okay. Yes. Well, that's particular kind with the important and urgent is referred to as the Eisenhower method because apparently he made it famous. But unfortunately, the downside of the Eisenhower method is the tyranny of the urgent. And that's something that I often fall into where you're just running from one urgent thing on your list to the next urgent thing. And there was a business growth guy in our old church. He used to get paid $50,000 to visit business for like a 1-hour session. They'd pay him $50,000. And he said, actually what a lot of churches need to do is delegate all the urgent they can, let what can die, and focus on the important. Because he said what is important but not urgent is usually the most important, right? Things like, it can be any part of life. It doesn't have to be ministry. It's like discipling your children. Is it urgent? In a certain sense, no. But if you don't do it over the course of 18 years, it's not going to happen. It's very important, but it's not pressing in any given moment. But you have to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah, making disciples, or things like, prioritizing my life, trying to sort out distractions, all those things. They're not pressing in any given moment, but they're very important, and we have to try to actually, like I said, I think that's the downside of the Eisenhower method, is it can lead to the tyranny of the urgent instead of letting us focus on the important.
Allowing the urgent to rule your life is a very wide open door for the enemy.
Yeah, true. Wow.
Things that seem very urgent at the time. And if you take a step back and pray, sometimes what appeared urgent isn't really urgent. It just felt urgent. And so I need to deal with this right now. You take a step. I'll call you back in a couple minutes. Then think about, you know what? It doesn't have to be done right now. It doesn't even have to be done this week.
Yeah. So for anybody at home, she was just saying that if you live your life by the urgent, it's a great open door for the enemy to start to rule your life with a bunch of urgent. He's got all kinds of disastrous people who are on drugs and all these other problems, who need a place to stay for the night. And I've seen pastors get sucked into that downward spiral of just, there's always another emergency, and there's emergency upon emergency, and it never stops. Yeah, and then you've given your life to the urgent, and you never got to the important.
We can bear in mind that God is controlling the whole world. No, I mean, he's in charge of the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
He's allowing you. We just need to be seeking him. Are you asking me to do this? And if so, are you asking me to do now, or tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
next week, or next month?
Yeah.
I know that these things are good tips, but I really think the most crucial thing is to hear God.
Mm-hmm.
If he's saying do this, then you need to do it whether you're rich or fair, whether you know you can't quit praying, whether you never tried it before, you don't think. If he's saying do it, then he'll be with you in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to see, what do you mean moving forward in my ministry? You've got to define what is forward.
Mm-hmm.
What is my ministry about? What should I be accomplishing? What direction should I be going?
Yeah.
And the Good Samaritan story is a really good example of people who are moving forward in their ministry and missing what Jesus would have done.
Yeah. Missing what Jesus would have done. That's an important one. And I think there's a shift that has to happen to a noble-mindedness, right? The Bible exhorts being noble-minded. Okay, what makes for a noble mind? See, my dad was in the trades. I kind of grew up in the trades and was in there for a little bit, not like some of us other guys, but in the trades, they'd say, trying to think of how I can say this from the stage, but I had, guys in the trades, all I want to see is elbows and bums, right? That's saying, I want to see you hunched over working on something. I never want to see you doing anything but hunched over working somewhere. And that's what a lot of us were raised up. My grandfather at the grocery store, I used to work there, and I stuck my hands in my pockets one time, and oh boy, that was a no-no. You never stick your hands in your pockets at work, because now I'm going to find 18 things for you to do, right? And I remember, I never want to see you with your hands in your pockets at work again. But a noble-mindedness also has that ability to take a step back and say, okay, wait a second, guys. Does this matter? What we're busying ourselves with right now doesn't matter. That's what nobility does, right? All the peasants are doing all their things, and the nobles up there like, okay, what is the overarching plan here? How do we work more efficiently? How do we be the Ford that makes the assembly line that helps everybody else work more efficiently? What do we do? But it's a real shift in thinking. I heard of a man who his son said, "Hey, my friends get paid to take the trash out. Would you pay me to take the trash out?" And he said, "If I pay you to take the trash out, you're going to get the mentality of a trash man. You're going to be a trash man when you grow up. I will pay you for every book you read." Because that's what, in essence, noble-minded people do. They collect information and knowledge and wisdom and pull from that, not in the kind of hectic way that a lot of us live, but in a way that's able to step back and be discerning. I guess discerning is a good word for it. The poor you will always have with you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You send $5 to 150 ministries, and each of those ministries is going to spend $50 in accounting, giving you your taxable or your charitable donation. Yes. Yeah. And all their secretaries are like, good Lord. He still wants his charitable giving receipt. Oh, man. Please stop giving. You're just annoying. Yeah, my uncle used to say, it's just enough to tick you off. They gave just enough to make you upset.
My counselor pointed out to me years ago that, even Jesus, when he was doing his earthly ministry, every town he left, there was more people that needed to hear his words, needed healing, but he knew when he was always about his Father's business.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody's looking for you. Let's move on. What do you mean? You're a store. What do you mean, let's move on? Mm-hmm. Well, and I was thinking today along those lines and against the tyranny of the urgent. John 16:12, where Jesus also leaves things undone. Whenever we prioritize properly, it often, if we can't delegate it, then it's either, okay, we do this thing that we're not really called to do, or we leave it undone. And there were things where Jesus, he said, look, I have much to say to you, and you're not ready. That means, look, there's other things I want to do, I could do. If I could stay longer, I could do good things, but it's better that I go, because then I'll send the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will help teach you those things. Which, of course, then they were stubborn and stiff-necked, and the writer of Hebrews is still like, I can't, there's still a bunch of stuff I'd like to impart to you, but you need somebody to reteach you the elementary doctrines. But there's always more. And part of the wisdom of Jesus is to say, okay, we're not going to get to it all. And that's, we've had seasons where we were more intentional about trying to have a Sabbath. And one of the things I always learn about having a Sabbath day is there are always things that remain undone. There will always be things you're like, I want to get to that, and I want to get to that. And if you don't celebrate Sabbath, then you just try to do it the next day, which sometimes is amazing how many days you'll be like, I'll get it tomorrow. And it's like weeks later, and you still haven't got it done. But I think there's really something to that picture of when the Sabbath hits, what is undone remains undone, because that's what it's going to be at the return of the Son of Man. When Jesus comes back, whatever is undone remains undone. And that's just the state. That's the way that John wraps up the book of Revelation, right? He says, let the righteous still be righteous, and the holy still be holy, and the filthy still be filthy, and the unrighteous still be unrighteous. He says, look, at some point when Jesus comes back, everything is the way it is. And he comes back into that mess, and he throws the filthy out, and he keeps the good. He compares it to a bunch of fish in a barrel. He just goes through, not this fish. This is a good fish. That's an ugly, stinky, dirty fish. Get that out of here. And just sorts it all out. And that's a picture for us. One day, there will still be lots of things undone. But it just stopped. It's done. Chronos is done for the time being, at least. And we'll have a fresh start for a new batch here in a little bit, but we're going to sort out what is.
I've been amazed when I am obedient, when I have a list that's way too long, and something pops up. And I know the Lord is saying, do this, that, this. And I give my time, I give my energy, I give my effort. And somehow I end up getting more done than I would have if I was slave driving myself,
Mm-hmm.
pouring things that Holy Spirit's going, get to this. So I think we need to be obedient and trust God.
Did I tell you guys the story of the house that Francis Chan bought off of a missionary who's going to the mission field? So you guys know houses are crazy expensive in California, and Francis Chan was buying this little house off this guy who was going to the mission field, but it needed a lot of work. All the electric needed redone. They tore all the drywall out because there were issues, and so they were running through trying to redo everything before this missionary goes on the field so they can sign the papers and sell it or whatever. I don't know. It's just this crazy mess, and they were both working themselves crazy. He said the missionary confessed to him one time. He was like, he said, I couldn't go anymore. I was working all night, and I sat down against the wall, and I just dozed off with my bags on for about an hour. And Francis Chan goes, "You wicked and lazy servant." But so they were really pushing, trying to get this house done. And this guy is like lost or something. He knocks on the door, and this other guy, he's got bags on, and he goes over there and he starts talking with the guy. And, he's talking for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, half hour, hour. And at some point, Francis is like, "We got a project to do here." And, 2 hours in, he's got the hand on this guy's shoulder praying for him to receive Jesus. And, he's kind of like, "Well, that's good, but we got to get going." And then after he finishes praying with the guy, he's like, "Oh, you have electrical in here that needs done. I'm an electrician. Would you like me to come in tomorrow and help you guys?" And it's amazing how that works when you just say, "Okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing." But it's hard sometimes when you're in that crunch and you just feel that crunch to still say, "No, I'm pulling away to do what I'm supposed to be doing." Yeah, especially when there's a longer pause between you see the answer. That's a little bit easier when you're obedient and you immediately see the answer. It's harder when, God brings somebody along a week or two later and you're like, "Finally." Yeah. Well, anyhow, we about held you guys for the time. You're welcome to stay around and talk a little bit if you'd like, but I want to make sure to get you guys out of here on time. Want to try to prioritize your time as well. So, Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to get together as a group of friends and family and discuss the good things that you have to teach us. Lord, I'm so thankful that you have let us be born in a country that is built upon the truth of your word. I'm so thankful that we're not in some Muslim country where they know no rest. They know no Sabbath. It's always work, and yet so often that always working is never productive. It just feels like things go in circles, and where the schools, the madrasah, teach people the Quran in a language they don't even understand, that's their schooling, to memorize the words of Muhammad in a language that they don't understand. And even the theologians only understand 67% of what was written in the Quran, and yet they have to memorize it as if it's some source of eternal wisdom, whereas we have your Logos. We have your true words of knowledge and understanding. You are the God who spoke order into chaos. You are the God who first created the world, but then as the world was tohu vabohu, as it was void and empty, you spoke order into the chaos. And you continued that order day upon day, making good things very good. Lord, I pray that you would give us that patience to have things that aren't very good yet. Lord, I thank you for the patience that these people have already shown in our young and growing group when things don't run very good, to just say good is good enough, and one day we'll get better. Lord, help us to have that grace with ourselves and with others. But I pray that we want to get lazy, that we want to get bogged down, that we want to get hung up on things that we're not supposed to get hung up, the distractions, the thorns and the weeds of this life, Lord. Help us to cast all that aside and run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Christ Jesus, both the author and perfecter of our faith. Thank you, Lord, that you have let us know the author of all things from the beginning, and that he's not only the author, but he eventually does get us to where it's perfect. Thank you for being the perfecter. In Jesus' name, amen.